Hello, hello everyone. I'm very happy to be back with my stream. And it's Friday, and Friday means it's time for my bootcamp. And it's marking already the third week since I've started this new project. Every Friday, I'm going to do streams for various educational stuff regarding chess. The very first week, I did bootcamp about rook games. I'm not sure if in the archive you can still see it. If you cannot, you can find my YouTube channel. I've uploaded the video right there. Yeah, it was rather nice. And last week I was doing also endgames, and I did endgames rook versus bishop, and it was highly instructive, I believe. Yeah, hi Rishik, not right now. No, I won't play right now. I plan to spend a couple of hours for uh, yeah, studying something interesting. And today I've chosen the topic of anti-Najdorf. Yeah, I'll explain to you why is the reason why I chose exactly this topic. But yeah, I just decided it's enough about endgames. Of course, it's very important, deep stuff, but how long can you do them, right? So yeah, I decided I need to move on and what to do. I was thinking of various possible topics, and I thought, okay, it's probably pretty much obvious that I should do something opening related. Yeah. So So anyway, I decided to do the anti-Najdorf. The reason is very simple, because I did three databases for modern chess. There's such a very nice website which publishes various opening repertoires of some very strong GMs, and I'm very happy to be one of them. So one of my very first work for them was doing an anti-Najdorf approach. So, but please don't be confused. In this bootcamp, it's not going to be, I'm not going to be advertising my bootcamp, and that's the sole purpose. Of course not. Yeah, of course I'll mention what I've wrote in the database. Hi, Alexandros. Yes. Yeah, of course, I'll mention what I've wrote in the database, but I would like to give you some kind of overview how I came to this idea, because it wasn't like that I chose the specific line for which I wrote the database for modern chess, and I thought, okay, this is gonna be it, right? And now, I'm gonna study this in earnest. There was a reason why I chose this. So I think it would be very nice that we could try to make some kind of overview of the possibilities what you can play against an either. Yeah, and why Najdorf? Why it was my very first topic? Because, obviously, Najdorf bears the reputation of being a very fearsome, very dangerous opening that maybe some of the white players they're actually afraid of to meet. I don't know. It usually brings really exciting and adventurous full games. So since the very beginning, I've been a positional player myself. So if you are a positional player and you are also seeking for some kind of an offbeat anti-approach, this is going to be exactly for you. But if you are like a hardcore theory follower, you like to study the main lines, you are the big fan of the poison pawn variation, I'm afraid I can't help you here. But maybe you still will find some of the information useful. Right. So what I wrote in my database specifically for e4, c5, knight f3, d6 is bishop b5. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. So historically wise, everyone has been playing d4. Pretty much that's been the main opening for many years. Since Cheska's evolution to High Chess Master. Yeah, Rishik, I'll try to show my tricks. That's the real goal here. Try to show you some tricks, or at least some ideas that you might find useful. So, the main lines of the Najdorf, it's been extremely popular. Pretty much every strong player in the world has played it. Yeah, Garry Kasparov probably is the biggest name, obviously, to play the line. Magnus Carlsen also has played some Najdorf, but he is fan of different openings. And here, the main lines used to be bishop g5, bishop e3. Bobby Fischer was playing bishop c4 with great success, and he even got the line called in his name. Fischer saws an attack. There are many moves. Pretty much every single move has been tested in practice. You can just try to imagine. I'll just try to name them. It's G3, it's F3, it's F4, it's H3, H4, G3. Probably not G4 yet because that drops a pawn. Bishop G5, I believe I mentioned. Bishop E3, Bishop C4, D3, E2, A3, A4, anything. I mean, even Knight B3, and I'm not so sure about Knight E5 though, but I mean, this is crazy. I mean, there are so many developments in this line. So my approach toward this since the very beginning was, I mean, why bother? I mean, why bother to go to this line and then try to find an excuse, right? I mean, I have to find something tricky and then try to trick my opponent and go for the offbeat line anyway. So I was seeking for a way to try to get interesting game earlier than this, before I played d4. So let's go back to the very beginning. I mean, d4 obviously is still pretty much playable. And if you have played quite a decent number of Najdorf games, what about, I mean, this is just one of the many possibilities, obviously. So what about if you would try something like queen takes on d4? So queen takes on d4 is one of the possibilities that you can try to employ. I have been myself a big fan of the Morozzi bind. Morozzi bind, which means typically white pushes the pawns e4 and c4 against the pawn on d6 and then tries to squeeze black in a long maneuvering game, right? But here the point is after queen takes on d4, knight c6, bishop b5, bishop d7. Okay, here's the popular move queen e3 immediately, but I believe the simplest approach is bishop c6, bishop c6, and not c4 right now, because I believe after c4 black does get desired game. Nakamura variation, I'm pretty sure it bears a different title. I'm always mixing up the titles of these sidelines, but pretty sure it was Nakamura variation. Maybe he has played so many times and the line is gonna get a new name after some years. I mean, who knows? But no, I don't think it has the official title of Nakamura variation right now, unless I'm mistaken. But if I'm mistaken, please correct me. Okay, but I mean, it's not really that relevant. So the point here, for example, is that white can play positionally, knight c3. And let's say if black plays something like knight f6, white typically can play bishop g5, followed by long castle. I mean, long castle is not even necessary, but you can try to target this pawn. So something like e6. Now I've forgotten the main line here. Pretty sure it was, yeah, I wish I would remember it. I mean, I did not write it down. Pretty sure it was something like this. Queen goes here, and you can try to get to this pawn, and at least it promises you some kind of a. It doesn't what? You're saying something. What it doesn't? You mean on f6? You mean on c6 in the beginning? Yeah, but I mean you do keep the queen on d4. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to give you some kind of an overview so that you understand your choices. I'm going to give you some overview. What are the possibilities here? You can try to find something interesting, and perhaps you can pursue it yourself. Because, you know, I'll tell you how it started for me. When I was starting to learn chess, my very first chess coach, he told me, Artur, you gotta play this. So I did. I mean, I was playing for many years the same line. I was playing the Open Sicilian, and I had no clue. I was playing the same line, pretty much not in the best order. And some of the lines, some of the games, they were working for me, and some of them not so much. Yeah, and I was feeling all the time not really comfortable. And after some years, I realized I need to change something. So I started to experiment a lot, and I started to look at the other possibilities that are available in the Najdorf, and I came to the anti-Najdorf approach, and I really started to like it because it's suited to my playing style. Again, I mean, uh, if you are a big fan of a very aggressive approach, yeah, probably anti-approach, playing some solid chess is maybe you won't find it so much appealing, but still, for certain games, it might be an interesting choice for you. Yeah, and here typically, like I said, bishop g5, long castle. There was this possibility also to exchange on f6, double the pawns, and then just seek for some kind of easy game, something like knight d4. f4, f5. Yeah, and these typical ideas try to force black to play e5 and then fight for the d5 square. Something like that. I mean, this is just one possibility. So typically here after knight c3, black was all the time thinking how to stop this. So the most popular approach here so far has been to play immediately e5. I mean, e6 here is still possible, I believe. But after e6, you can still play bishop g5, long castle. You're ahead in development, so it should be easy game for you. So the most challenging approach is to play e5, queen d3, and h6, I believe. Yeah, this line has been tested at the highest level. It is sort of paradoxical because black is so much lagging behind in development by something like 2 tempi. But for white, it's not easy to prove what he has here. And I came to like really this positional approach, which I'm not so sure actually what is the difference. Should white castle, short castle immediately and play rook d1? But I believe the simplest approach is to play knight d2 immediately. So it's very simple. White plays either knight c4, knight e3, or knight f1, knight e3, and takes a good care of the d5 square. So it's very easy. Yeah, hi Iltrevi. So it's very easy again. So let's say black plays something like knight f6. I could play knight c4. So that's a really beautiful knight on c4. I don't know, something like bishop e7, knight e3, castle. I could make a short castle here. I'm not so sure if I'm playing it out accurately, but that's at least the general idea. And at some point, let's say a6 is met by a4. If white manages to play, typically the rook goes here. If white manages to play b3, bishop b2, a5, knight a4, and c4, black is strategically busted, I believe, because it's so difficult for black to find a really direct play. Because, I mean, you have to understand, at least I believe so. Najdorf, a player with Najdorf who plays it with black, it's typically a very aggressive player, a very sharp player. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, obviously, Garry Kasparov. And then there's Hikaru Nakamura, obviously, right? Jan Nepomniachtchi, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. I mean, these are super duper very strong players, and all of them chose Najdorf to play one of their main weapons because it promises quite a sharp play. So I would always imagine, since I'm playing against an opponent who plays the Najdorf, so I'm coming right against them with a fire extinguisher. So that's my anti-Sicilian approach. I mean, they're coming towards me with a very aggressive defense, and I'm like with a fire extinguisher, trying to remove the fire and aiming for a positional approach. And it's impossible. It's pretty much impossible for black to get hostilities if white doesn't want it. Yeah, so yeah, why Wesley? So yeah, that's a good question, but I'm pretty sure that it doesn't suit his style, right? I mean, Wesley, he is a positional player. He really likes to play it calm. You look at these players who are playing the Najdorf. They're very sharp players. They're very good at calculating lines. And yeah, and actually, I'm sort of surprised that Magnus Carlsen is not playing really so much Najdorf because he has started to play much more aggressively. He has played some share of the games in Najdorf, but not so much really. Yeah, so he fancies c5, knight c6, various Rossolimos or e4, e5 anyway, because it suits his style. But again, for example, like Hikaru Nakamura, he really likes. Yeah, but you know the reason why he doesn't like the Najdorf, I believe, is that he has started to think at a different level. I mean, he has actually changed his attitude towards the openings, as you might have noticed. He also pretty much doesn't play the King's Indian as well. He plays much more solid. So at the top level, you cannot really go like that. You cannot really throw the gauntlet at your opponent with black and just try to outplay him. So yeah, he has changed. I believe so. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe so that he has changed his attitude towards his approach, and probably he would play the Najdorf for King's Indian in a situation when he needs a win. Yeah, but in a normal situation, he plays with black. Let's say a super strong player. Most likely he'll play something more peaceful. Right, I mean, it's just an example. Right, and I don't know, let's put a couple of moves after a4. Let's say typically black plays queen c7. I'm gonna play something like b3 here, rook d1, so that we are stopping any d6, d5 ideas here. I don't know, maybe a5. And black might simply at one moment run out with the moves. So that is the whole purpose of this line. So I don't know, something like this, here, and ideally I would love to protect this pawn on c2, and after knight d5, or maybe knight a4, knight b6. If I could manage to do this, I simply play c4, play rook d1, bishop a3, and this pawn is in danger. So that's at least the idea of this whole line. Why this d4 c takes queen d4 is quite an interesting line, and I would suggest for you at least try it a couple of times. I mean, okay, I mean, black doesn't have to play knight c6, but what can he do? I mean, he could play something like, I'm not sure actually if knight f6 is possible here, so I'm pretty sure that's a risky approach, probably because of the immediate e5. e5, knight c6, I'm pretty sure there was such a line, yeah, bishop b5. Yeah, I did not check it before. I mean, this is quite a rare line, and yeah, typically everybody goes for the bishop. There is the small queen e3, which I mentioned before. Yeah, I mean, Nakamura was playing, exactly. I don't know, about the years 2015, 16, some years ago. He was playing Najdorf and King's Indian. Now check his games. He's not playing. I mean, at least not King's Indian anymore. He has changed his attitude, I believe, towards the openings. So it doesn't mean that King's Indian and Najdorf, they're wrong and very good openings. It's just he changes his approach. Yeah, so here again, bishop b5, bishop d7 takes. Okay, maybe b takes on c6 is possible, but you can try to play c4, c5 is a classical idea, something like this. c4, maybe. No, maybe not here, c4. Yeah, maybe I'm mixing up. From another line, something like a castle, and just proceed to play positionally. b takes on c6, I believe, is quite a rare line. So, oh, we have a raider. Hello. Hi, Sam. Thank you for raiding. Yeah, appreciate you guys. I am right now doing a boot camp. Yeah, boot camp, trying to teach something important. Hi, guys. I appreciate you have came by. I'm doing, yeah, my boot camp teaching some anti-Najdorf approach. So I'll try to gather some ideas and show you some possibilities that you can play against a dreadful uh, Najdorf. And in the end, I'm going to switch to the main event, which is my proposed continuation, bishop b5. But in the beginning, I'll show you the typical approaches here for white. Yeah, thank you again that you're here. Really appreciate it. So queen d4 is one of the continuations, obviously, but I'm not so sure if it really classifies as an anti-Sicilian because you already pushed d4. Yeah, like I said, I'm gonna advocate for bishop b5. There is, of course, this move c3, which would make very much sense. Yeah, so we want to take the center, c3, play d4 the next move. But the problem is here that black challenges your center with knight f6. So it's not so easy to protect this pawn. Something like queen c2 would feel rather weird, trying to continue d4 afterwards. So there is this trick, of course, bishop e2, and you cannot take knight e4 because there's this very nice trick. Yeah, but supposedly everybody knows this. So bishop e2, as long as black doesn't play knight c6, I mean, knight c6 probably is not so great move, because after knight c6 you manage to play d4, and white is having some sort of an advantage. So d4, and the point being is knight e4 is met by d5, and the same idea. So this means black is never going to play knight c6. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have to. Yeah, raid. Yeah, so let's say he typically plays something like g6, castle, bishop g7, and yeah, and in sooner or later white is gonna have to protect his pawn on e4. So I don't know, something like, yeah, I believe there is this move bishop b5 check, rather weird move, giving up a tempo. bishop d7, takes, either queen e1 or rook e2. I'm not so sure about this particular position. And typically the position goes here, e5 and knight e4. That's a classic. I mean, okay, with the bishop on g7, it's not really that classic position, but we are going to return to this position slightly later. And I believe black is okay, but this is perfectly playable position for white. I mean, structure-wise. So this approach to play c3, d4. Yeah, so c3 here doesn't really work. And before we are going for knight f3 and bishop b5, what is the alternative here? I believe quite an interesting approach is to play knight c3. And I've seen quite some share of games in the past years. Even at the highest level, people have started to play knight c3 of the second move, which was for many years believed it's nothing special really for white, because everybody was taught that you have to play the main line with the Najdorf and try to pursue the advantage there. But the question is, where is this advantage in the main Najdorf lines? Even the poison pawn line is having a very good reputation. If you have a very good memory, you can easily play this line. So essentially, we are coming to the conclusion that black is fine pretty much in every single line. So the question is, which line should you choose which suits your approach? So knight c3 is rather interesting. So here we go. I mean, knight c3, especially against Najdorf players. And let me tell you this. I believe the majority, I mean, of course, minus elite players like Carlsen, Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, I mean, Anand. The majority of the players, they play the same opening. I mean, they have just one single opening. So, for example, if I would play against a typical, I don't know, not club player, but let's say a typical good player up to 2-400, something like that, most likely he's having only one repertoire. He's playing the Najdorf. So if you play knight c3, there is a good chance he's going to play Najdorf anyway. Because if he would play something like knight c6, you have the possibility to play knight f3, still switch to d4, and he doesn't play this. So he is forced to do something else. I don't know, play e5 or g6 or e6, switch to Taimanov, switch to Dragon. This is something else. Yeah, but I'm not gonna suggest that you play knight f3. So here this very interesting point is, let's say your opponent is playing d6. I'd like to recommend to think about this continuation, which is d4. So d4, it's rather odd. It has some similarity with the knight f3 idea. Remember, right? e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes, queen d4. But this is a different approach. So, okay, we are still going to take with the queen d4. I mean, okay, black again doesn't have to play knight c6, but let's assume he does. So knight c6, and here comes the real shocker. Probably you've seen this position. There was a very famous game, Magnus Carlsen against Radoslav Wojtaszek, which was 2018, I believe. They played in whichever super tournament, Shamkir maybe, I don't remember to be honest. And the idea is to play queen d2. So queen d2, you might ask, I mean, what is the reason? Why would you want to position the queen on d2 in front of the bishop? I mean, what's my plan? The plan is very simple. You want to play b3, bishop b2, make a long castle, and simply proceed the kingside attack. It's that simple. So let's say black plays something like in the game, Carlsen against Wojtaszek. Let me try to remember how was this. Yeah, pretty sure it was knight f6, here, bishop b2, here. No, I think in the game was particular game it was a6. Yeah, so pretty sure Radoslav was surprised by this choice of openings by the world champion. So black plays all of the normal moves. f3. Yeah, and here he misplayed the position. He played in the style of the Najdorf. h5 is a rather common idea in the Najdorf, in the open Najdorf lines where white stops the advancement of the pawns. And then Magnus proceeded this way, and black king already was feeling in distress. So in the end, Carlsen won a really, really nice and positional game. Yeah, so he just proceeded to play in the center, positioned all the pieces harmonically, and the Black King never found his way in this game. You know, I believe they played this game in 2018. And in 2018, we had a chess Olympiad in Batumi. So I was playing the first round game. So I thought, okay, I mean, I also want to try this. I mean, I had seen this idea. So I decided, okay, I want to play this. So I was playing against, I don't remember which country, about 2,200 level player. I had almost no preparation. So I thought, okay, I mean, for fun. It's first round game. I mean, so what I got to lose? So, okay, maybe I make a draw in the worst case. Yeah, I was hoping I'm not going to lose. So I played after queen d2, knight f6, b3, here, 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 long castle, here. Yeah, and now my opponent did not play h5. So that's all I knew. I mean, I just knew this game, Carlsen against Wojtaszek. So that was all my knowledge before the game. And I presumably repeated the moves. And here I discovered that after g4, yeah, I should have pushed h4 in the beginning. I had no clue how to properly start the attack. I believe h4, h5 is more promising looking. And then only push g5 and g6, which is the classical idea. And what's funny about this position, it's so much more difficult for black to start a typical counterplay at the queen side, because b3, bishop b2 guards the king, and as soon as black is going to push the typical b4, the knight is going to a4, stopping all of the possibilities for black to start any real counterattack. Yeah, but I mean, I sort of misplayed this position, and at this moment I realized that I have to sacrifice a piece. Yeah, otherwise a5, a4 is incoming. So I sort of improvised, but I won a very nice game afterwards. So yeah, I have a lot of pieces attacking at the king side. My king is feeling safe. I can play h5, I can play f4, I can play rook g1, g6, and so on and so forth. And I won a game in a quite nice fashion. But okay, I'm not going to show it because that's not the purpose of today's bootcamp. I just want to show you some possibilities, what you can choose. And I believe here the critical line, if your opponent knows this, it's rather difficult to pick up. I mean, there's nothing wrong with knight f6, e6, bishop e7, but I do believe that white's game, let's go again this. So let's say again, knight f6, b3, e6, bishop b2 here. Typically, computer says it's about equal, as always. Yeah, a6, g4, b5. Yeah, I'm not so sure about this king b1 move. Should I need this or not? Maybe you can start it immediately with h4. So h4, b4, knight a4. I don't know, d5, does it work or not? No, I don't think so. It's g5, you just take on d5. So for black, it's not so easy to start a counterattack. Yeah, and I believe I just misplayed my game. I pushed immediately g5. But I should have pushed h4, h5 in the beginning and still have rather a reasonable position. But the best line here for queen d2 is actually to play g6. Yeah, it's not obvious, right? So I play g6, b3, bishop h6. Yeah, I mean, you might ask, where's the idea? Where's the big idea? Black wants to trade the bishops, or at least misplace the queen. So f4. There was some f5 games, I believe, at the highest level. Top GMs were playing this a couple of years ago. I believe right now at their level everybody already knows this. So this is supposedly not really a dangerous line, but don't be surprised if at some blitz or rapid games this line at the top level might still show up. And knight f6, bishop g2, what was the continuation here? Castle, castle, and a5. I believe that was very, very precise move to push immediately a4, knight e4, and organize a counterplay. e4, a4, e5, and very, very sharp game. Yeah. So if your opponent knows this, so in the worst case scenario, you have reached a very sharp game, and you have castled the opposite side, each side. I mean, he is castled short castle, you have made a long castle, and you have plenty of possibilities to start an attack or try to take the pawn on d6, and the game is very much unbalanced. I mean, but okay, this is still not an anti-Najdorf approach, but as an interesting idea, try to surprise your opponent. and take him by surprise. Yeah. So that's about Queen D2 and Knight C3 in particular. About these structures, by playing Knight C3, I believe there's also another idea, rather interesting. I mean, I'm going to show you various setups, and you can freely improvise. I mean, I'm not saying that this is exactly the order of the moves you should play it out. You can try to gather ideas, and perhaps you can try to combine something out of this, and you'll realize that there's so many interesting hidden possibilities that you never even thought about before. So here, for example, there is an interesting idea to get rid of this bishop, because typically it's not really that well placed. You could opt for some kind of a Grand Prix attack. I'm not going to cover this today. So the Grand Prix attack would be to play f4, knight f3, bishop c4, d3. But this bishop on c4 typically jumps under e6, d5. So there is this idea after, let's say, d6, give up the bishop. Let's say, I don't know, black would do something like bishop d7, trade the bishop here, and just seek a positional game. And that's it. So you play d3, then you play f4. So I don't know, something like knight c6, f4. Black would play whatever. I mean, something like g6, knight f3, bishop g7, castle here. And you can try to opt for a standard kingside attack. Queen e1, queen h4, f5, bishop h6, and knight g5. Yeah, or just play positional. There's pretty much nothing else that you can try for white. And again, I mean, the position supposedly is about equal, but I mean, you do have some sort of initiative going on here. Yeah, so that's about this d6. But if black would play knight c6, I mean, this again would be a really nice weapon against people who consistently play only knight c6, the second move. There are many people, for example, especially that right now Magnus Carlsen has started to play c5, knight c6, the second move in the Sicilian. Many people have followed him. So here you don't have to go for the main lines, but you have the possibilities to still play bishop b5. Again, you want to give up the bishop on c6 and play d3, f4, and knight f3. For example, let's say black doesn't know much here. He goes something like g6. Now you take on c6, b takes, d3, bishop g7, and f4. And if you check the database, this line scores really well for white, because black is usually struggling with the game. It might have some resemblance to the so-called Rossolimo line, which has been championed for black by Magnus Carlsen. So let's check this line. You might remember they played in the World Championship match Magnus Carlsen against Fabiano Caruana. I mean, Caruana typically was the white player. So bishop b5, g6, takes, d3, bishop g7, knight c3, and so on and so forth. I'm pretty sure that was their first game. In the first game, I believe Fabiano was trying to play this line the third and fifth game, and at some point he switched because he realized he cannot get through. But as you see this position, the knight is standing already on f3. So there is this idea to think about. Perhaps you can try to think about playing knight c3 immediately. And if your opponent blindly follows the same idea and still plays knight c6, you play bishop b5, g6, take, d3 here, and now you play f4. I mean, I'm sorry, not b takes. Yeah, I should have put the position with d takes. Yeah, so that you see the resemblance. So here d takes, d3, bishop g7, and you could play, of course, knight f3. Try to transform the position, but now you manage to play f4, which would be the typical idea for white anyway. So something like f4, knight f6, here, and again white has an easier game, and perhaps can again try to think about some ideas as queen e1, queen h4, f5, bishop h6. So that's the classical idea in this line. So you don't have to spend some couple of tempi by playing h3, knight h2, and then only push f2, f4. As far as I know, after bishop b5, the best continuation for black is knight d4. So I've been playing it myself for black. So knight d4. Now you play knight f3, inviting to take on b5, which is still perfectly fine. Knight b5 takes. Let's say black resumes to some kind of Sicilian approach, d6. And now, since we are so much ahead in development, we switch to the open Sicilian. And now, do you remember this line? I mentioned it before. Why it is so important to know as many of these lines as possible. And now, let's say black would play e5, queen d3, h6, with the idea to play knight f6, bishop e7. I was advocating this idea to play knight d2, knight f1, or knight c4 for that matter, doesn't really matter, knight e3, knight d5, a4, and aim for a positional game. Yeah, so it's rather tricky, and for black, there's just no way to get a sharp game. So okay, I mean black could avoid to take on b5. So the best continuation here, I believe, is what was here? Yeah, pretty sure it was e6, castle, a6. Now comes the odd move, bishop d3. And you want to take on d4. So for example, let's say black would play something like, I have not written it down, I'm trying to remember. Let's say he would play something like d6. Now you have this possibility to take on d4, take, knight e2, followed by c3. So let's say knight f6, c3, takes, takes. And the position is sort of slightly better for white, because black is suffering with this pawn. So you can play something like bishop f4, queen d2, maybe rook d1. So normally black should be fine, but for white the position is sort of easier to play with a small edge. Right, so the best continuation here actually after a6, bishop d3, black has to pick up knight c6. It's not an easy move, right? I mean, black played knight e4, and now he goes back, knight c6. So there were a couple of continuations. You could still play bishop e2 by threatening to switch them open Sicilian. Wasn't it here where black would again play knight e4? Now I don't remember this. Yeah, that would be rather weird, wouldn't it? Yeah, but you can still play for some development with b3, bishop b2, e5, rook e1, and have very nice bishops standing in this diagonal and presumably give you some attacking chances. Yeah, so that's rather interesting. I played it myself in a couple of games, and yeah, I like it. Yeah, so that's about knight c3. Let me check it if I missed anything. Yeah, pretty sure I did not. Yeah, of course, I mean, it depends on what move black is going to choose. He has so many moves. Yeah, he can play g6, he can play e6, he can play d6, he can play knight c6, maybe even a6. Many moves. But very often this line is combined with a quite a tricky approach, which I'd like to show you, but with a different second move. So the different second move here is after c5. It's quite tricky. Knight e2. So knight e2 might ask, what is this? I mean, what's that weird move? You are reserving the move for knight c3 yet? I mean, perhaps you'll play knight c3, perhaps you won't. And for black, it's quite impossible to punish you immediately for this weird move. The plan is here to play g3 and bishop g2. And maybe you'll manage to play c3, d4 afterwards. Depends how your opponent is going to play it out. For example, let's say there is this rather tricky line. Let's say black is playing pretty much aggressively. Knight f6, very aggressive move. Here, d5 makes sense, right? Takes, 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 d4. So if black is going to take on d4, you are already having some sort of a little advantage because you are ahead in development. Bishop f4, castle, some knight b5 are incoming threats, something that black should be concerned about. So if you check the database, here so far, black has played quite a number of times a very logical move, e5. So it might seem, okay, now I'm in trouble, right? I mean, either I take on e5, black can even sacrifice the pawn, take on d1, let's say I take here, queen d1, knight c6, bishop f5, long castle and whatnot. Seems dangerous. But there's a very nice continuation for white, which is knight c3. You're sacrificing the pawn. Black has to take on d1. And now there's incoming threat of knight e5. Black cannot play knight a6, protecting from the fork, because there's a bishop a6. So this is why in a couple of games have already been played bishop e6. And now you play knight b5, knight a6, a very simple g3. Now I did not check this in the database, but I had the impression this is already a novelty. So it's rather easy novelty because you want to position the bishop on g2 and activate the bishop. Yeah, so either on black would play something like f5 perhaps, bishop g2, target this pawn, and if rook b8 you can take the pawn on a7 and get a rather interesting compensation for the sacrificed pawn. Yeah, so this is rather interesting. But if black doesn't do this after knight e2, he could try to play, let's say, I mean, we need to take attention to what black is exactly doing. Let's say if he's touching the d pawn already, d6. Now I believe you can already aim for the g3 immediately, because it's very unlikely he's going to play d5 the next move, which makes almost no sense. So knight f6, bishop g2, knight c6. And now you have this possibility to take the center with c3 and d4. So let's imagine black is playing something like g6, here, takes. And officially black has not played well the opening, so he's simply worse after the opening. You played a weird move, second move, black made all of the normal moves, and he's simply worse. And you managed to get an easy position against a sharp Najdorf. You have the center, you have very logically developed pieces, so black is suffering. So that's one of the ideas. As far as I'm concerned, knight e2 is not really that popular, but to me it looks rather weird. You know, there's even more funnier move than this, but you probably need to be a top GM to play this. I don't know. I've seen it in a number of games by some very good GMs. They have started to play this very strange setup here for white, which is bishop e2. I mean, what is this, right? But the point is very simple. White is not even looking at what setup black is building, and he's simply proceeding by playing f4, d3, knight f3, and castle, and that's it. So if you are the black player, now try to somehow punish white. I mean, it's not easy. So, like, okay, you might ask, I mean, the obvious move, right, is d5. Yeah, so d5, and white plays d3. He doesn't react. Yeah, so d3, let's say something like knight f6. No, I believe, wait a second, no, I believe I misplayed it. For some reason, d5 wasn't so good here. Yeah, I did not check this. Immediately d5 wasn't here, queen d5 and knight f3. Yeah. But I mean, in general, this idea that white is always aiming for this approach. So for example, knight c6, here, something like e6, knight f3, knight f6, what was here? Yeah, again, it's e5. So this is the position which I didn't want to show you, but how did it happen? Wait a second, I had written it down. So bishop e2, knight c6, f4, d5. So the point here is that you don't mind that black is taking on e4, because after queen d1, bishop d1, you're always aiming for some sort of a better endgame. Yeah, so this is rather weird. I mean, I've not spent so much time on analyzing this line. It's just, I think it's rather important that at least you know it. And I've talked to some very good grandmasters, and they share the opinion that for black, the best approach is not to push d5. Yeah. So here is, instead of this, yeah, maybe this is why I mixed it up, because I didn't really have had a look at so many lines with starting with d5. So let's say black plays knight c6, f4, d6, here, d3, castle, c3. That's again very, very easy approach. You could try again to go for the checkmate ideas, f5, bishop h6, or just play positionally. And for black, it's not easy to define the setup at the center. So something like castle, yeah, king h1, I believe, is usually a good move here. b5, a5, here, and something like this. And at the right time, you want to push d4 and e5. Right. Okay, but to be honest, I've never played bishop e2 myself, so I think it's rather odd. So yeah, so I don't really want to talk about it too much. And I've played a number of games with b3 myself, but typically the problem here with the bishop on b3 is that the black's best setup is to play d6 and e5, trying to limit this bishop's activity. If black knows this, b3 gives nothing for white. Yeah, I mean, it's not like there is even a single line in chess which really gives something for white. So again, you have to choose something which likes which is suitable for playing style. But yeah, I've even won some classical games in this line against grandmasters, but I believe it's not really that promising. So let's say black is playing something like this, and again, you are free to improvise. You can give up the bishop on f1, because, I mean, you don't want to spend tempi by playing g3, bishop g2, d3, f4, and so on and so forth. Of course, you could do this. But probably you want to give up the bishop. Let's say something like this. Play at the right time f4. Black would play this, trying to clarify the matters. And again, you're playing d3. I'm sorry, knight f3. What is with these arrows? Yeah, short castle. And aim for some positional approach. Maybe you can even play c4 at the right at some time, knight d2, and this bishop is looking really nice. So b3 is rather reasonable, but I believe, like I said, the biggest problem is if black realizes that he has to play d6 e5. Yeah, so again, there's not much theory here, so it's a lot of improvising, and I believe is that you shouldn't be afraid to improvise. Yeah, so it's always been my favorite part of playing chess is the ability to improvise and try something new all the time. And I wouldn't really want to do it like this, that I've played chess all my life, and I've been playing chess for what? No, not 30 years, yes, slightly less. So I've been playing chess for really quite a lot of time. And only to find out I have not tried so many interesting lines. Yeah, so perhaps, who knows, I've been playing the wrong opening my whole life. So that would be rather terrible thought, right? When I'm 80, I realize I should have been playing the English opening all the time, right? I mean, it suits my playing style. So I believe you should try always something new. So right now, I'm a big fan of the anti-Sicilians. So we are coming closer for the knight f3 and bishop b5. And let me shortly tell you something about Alapin. Alapin is the second move c3. I don't know. I mean, perhaps among you, there are players who like this line. Personally, I've never been a fan of the Alapin for white for one reason. I know it too well for black. And I've found a couple of rather promising lines for black, which I find it quite difficult for white to prove that he has even anything there. And the Alapin is the second move c3. So c3 with the idea to play d4. Typically for black, there are two main moves, which is knight f6 and which is d5. I've been playing knight f6 all my life, and I'm quite happy with the results. So knight f6 e5, knight d5 is the main line. And here, let's say if white is pushing for d4, I found that always c takes on d4. Let's say c takes on d4, d6, and very quick take on e5 gives black pretty much equality. Let's say I would play something like knight f3, so I take immediately. Yeah, so this probably would belong to how to properly play against Alapin with black or have a solid repertoire for black. But I mean, this is the reason why I don't want really to suggest something for to play Alapin for white, because I mean, I know this line so well for black. So, and again, d takes, knight c6, bishop c4, and knight b4. Yeah, and black easily gets a very good game. And I've come to the conclusion that the only way that white could try to play the Alapin is play the Alapin by delayed c takes on d4. Let's say knight f3. If black would play knight c6, then there are these tricky lines with d4, c takes, bishop c4, knight b6, and bishop b3. And now, for some reason, d takes on c3 is quite dangerous because white is so much ahead in development. And there is a big theory after d5. But again, as a black player after knight f3, I'm simply playing d6. So simplifying my matters, and after d4, takes. If white is going to take with the d4 with the pawn, again I'm switching to d takes on e5, which I believe is quite easily equalizing. Yeah, it's always quite problematic for white to get an advantage. For example, I could try to play something like bishop c4, which runs into knight b6 here. And wasn't there actually this line? Now I'm trying to remember. Daniil Dubov played one of the games in the Lindora Zabit tournament against Hikaru Nakamura, right? Now I'm trying to remember. It was one of the games where didn't he win? Yeah, I think it was the second mini match, the second day. Now my memory is failing me, but I think he also was playing the same line. So Daniil Dubov is one of the best theoreticians in the world right now. And yeah, so he was playing knight b6, bishop b3, c4 here. Pretty sure it was either d6 or d5. Now I don't really remember this. Okay. Yeah, but anyway, I mean, if you like the Alapin, it's totally fine. It's a very fine opening, and it's all about the taste. It's just mine is that Alapin is not really mine opening, but if you're happy with the results, of course, I mean, you can play this. Okay. So let's go back to the c5, knight f3, d6, and we are finally coming to my recommendation, which I wrote a database for modern chess. Which year was it? 2018. I've updated the database ever since. So I've been recommending to play bishop b5. Yeah, so the idea is very simple. We want to get rid of this bishop as quickly as possible. We are aiming for a castle as quickly as possible. And white's idea is rather simple, to play c3 and d4. Yeah, so there's nothing simpler than this. And I thought that, I mean, why not? But before I came to the main line, which I recommend in the database, I was playing something else. And I'm going to touch this right now, which might give you quite a nice idea what you could try to play in your games. Typically here, black has three moves, unless he wants to give up the queen for no good reason. So it's either knight c6, knight d7, and bishop d7. I would say like this. Bishop d7, this means black doesn't mind the draw. I mean, at least I've noticed in quite a competitive level. Let's say GMs playing against each other, bishop d7 is like a peaceful move. I mean, I don't mind exchanging the bishops. I'll play solidly. If a draw will happen, it's completely fine. Of course, I'll try to get more, but I mean, I don't really mind the draw. Knight d7, yeah, knight d7 is more aggressive. Yeah, so knight d7, I'm gonna definitely address this. Knight d7, the idea is that I want to play with black a6. White is forced to give up the bishop on d7, and yeah, and get a complex game. Otherwise, why did you play bishop b5 in the first place? But let's start with knight c6. Knight c6, this line actually can appear from a different order of the moves. For example, if we would start this line as e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, d6. As far as I'm concerned, at quite a competitive level, this line has disappeared. I mean, if you check the databases, quite good GMs, they last played this around 2015. No, it's not a draw. No, it's not like it's a draw. I mean, it's like approach. I mean, black doesn't mind to play peacefully. I mean, bishop d7 is more peaceful approach, and knight d7 is more aggressive approach. Yeah, don't worry about this. We're gonna get there. Yeah, so knight c6, it sort of became extinct at the GM level, and nobody's really playing this. And there's a very simple reason. A white is easily getting a strong center. So after knight c6, you simply play castle. So that was the idea for black, to play bishop d7, then proceed with a6. Yeah. Then proceed with a6, and now you play. What was the best order of the moves here? Let me try to remember this. Was it c3 or rook e1? I'm always mixing it up. I think it was rook e1. Yeah, rook e1, so that the bishop can retreat to f1. That is the traditional idea here. Cotronius with black. Can you please quote me? What did he recommend? I mean, I know this is obviously quite a contested line. It's been covered in more than one books. So yeah, but if you would give me a specific line, I could try to contest it. No, but it's not a good line. You can maybe he can back it up with some really specific analysis. But I'm just, yeah, thank you. I'm just telling you from a grandmaster's experience. I mean, if you talk with GMs, nobody is playing this, and you can check it. You can check it. By the way, which year the book is it? That's a good question, because I told you they stopped playing this a couple of years ago. Yeah, and if you talk among the GMs and check the databases, this line is not being played. It's been dropped because the reason is sort of the belief is white is having the advantage here. Pretty much, I believe this is pretty much the only continuation where white automatically is getting an advantage. After everything else, with the perfect play, black probably is fine. So again, after rook e1, knight f6, c3, a6, bishop f1, you want to play d4, the next move. So it's very easy. Again, it's not even clear what black can do about this, right? I mean, he's playing so slow. A knight c6, d6, bishop d7. He's not generating any threats against the center. So this allows you to finish development, put the rook on e1, play c3, d4. So all of the moves make very much sense. Now, obviously, you don't want to give up the bishop. I mean, we wouldn't mind to do it previously, when we could double the pawns. Not right now. So the bishop goes to f1, bishop g4, and here comes the tricky part. For a longest time, it was here the main line was h3. There's actually some trick. I mean, you might really appreciate this for white. So here's a nice trick. h3, bishop h5 is a mistake. Wouldn't you believe this? I mean, it's unbelievable. This is a mistake. I mean, a positional mistake. So g4, bishop g6, and now you might remember this motif from a different line. So d4, the pawn on e4 is untouchable because there is a threat of d5 and queen a4. For example, let's say bishop e4, I take with the rook on e4, knight e4, and d5. 3 point. It's queen a4, knight queen a4, attack the king, attack the knight. You're winning some material, and black is positionally busted. I mean, he cannot do this. And after d4 takes, what was the line here? Yeah, pretty sure it was. Now I'm showing you this line from memory. I obviously have everything written in the database. I'm showing you this from memory. So d5 takes, knight c3, e6, knight d5, queen d5, bishop g2. And you know what was really surprising? But there is an explanation. There was this line, it was repeated in which year was it? Wasn't it last year? Anish Giri against Shahryar Mamedyarov. It's unbelievable. Wasn't it the Zagreb Grand Prix? I mean, maybe if somebody would check it, I mean, you could verify this. I believe it was Giri against Mamedyarov. But to Shak's defense, you have to say that this line, this opening, appeared from a completely different order of moves. It was something like knight f3, c5, e4, d6, bishop b5, knight c6, something like that. So Shak wasn't really familiar with this, and he mixed it up. I mean, even at the highest level. So for me, it was like, oh, yes, because I analyzed this line in in 2018. So I knew this. This is a mistake, right? And I assume Giri also knew this, and he perfectly exploited the mistakes for black. And I believe the game was progressed something like what was, because knight e5 is a very big threat. And what was the line here? I don't remember. Something like castle. Yeah, castle knight e5 or bishop g5. Yeah, I don't remember, but black was very close to lost after the opening. So Shak was trying very hard, but he could not save the game. So anyway, I mean, this is already a nice trick to know. And one of the reasons why this line for black is not really that great. Yeah, I believe Abdullah Portal will check this line in Cotronia's book. I mean, but first you have to check which year was this, because like I said, it was perhaps playable about 5 years ago. Yeah, Girigan Shak. Yeah, Girigan Shak. This I remember, but I don't remember which year was it. I'm pretty sure it was last year. Last year, Zagreb, 2015. So he wrote this stuff, not in 2015. So you have to understand, he was writing it 2013, 14. Yeah, exactly. This is when it was being played. I mean, please don't misunderstand me. This is a playable line for black. It's not losing. It's just white gets a better position, and that's it. I mean, for example, if you would like this position as black, totally play this. But this was pretty much the only continuation where I was totally sure that white is getting a solid advantage in pretty much every single line. Yeah, so again, let's go back. So here the trick is after, sorry. Sorry. What happened here? Okay, so e4, c5, knight f3, d6, bishop b5, knight c6. Yeah, so we don't take on c6, although we could. So let's say castle. Of course, if black would play a6, yeah, then we would take on c6. Yeah, I believe then we would take on c6, takes, and pretty sure it's e5. A classical idea, try to play against these double pawns, because otherwise black would play himself e7, e5. So we are destroying his plans. And if he plays at some point d5, we can try to fix these pawns by playing d3, c4, I'm sorry, yeah, c4, knight c3, b3, knight a4, bishop a3, and this pawn on c5 is in danger. Yeah, so that's at least the general idea. But nobody really plays a6. So after knight c6, knight c6, castle, bishop d7, rook e1, we are preparing to play c3, d4. A6, we are going to retreat with the bishop f1. I believe there was this sideline without playing knight f6, by playing a6 and bishop f1. But okay, let's stick to the main line. But there's a point, there's a reason why I'm not going to recommend to you h3. I mean, h3 is a useful idea to know, especially if you might anticipate that your opponent doesn't know this and he's going to possibly play bishop h5, then it's already black is in danger. But there's a reason, because after h3, black can play bishop f3, queen f3, and e6, pretty much with a very solid position. So here I've become quite a big fan of the continuation, not h3, but d4. And we don't mind doubling the pawns on f3. So for example, black is playing c takes on d4, takes. If he's taken f3, it's no big deal. Okay, we could try with move e5 and bishop e3. So that's the idea. Again, knight e4 is impossible because of d4, d5, and queen a4 check. This motif is quite common for these lines. And after bishop e3, let's say black would take here, trying to undermine my strategy, destroying my pawn structure. We are taking here. Yeah, I don't know, something like bishop e7. And typically for white, it's very easy. The knight goes here, the bishop goes here, the pawn goes here. And white simply enjoys advantage. Yeah, so this d4 is a very powerful move. I mean, obviously, there's also a move as... which was it? Yeah, there's actually rather tricky line, which I analyzed in my database after c takes d4, c takes on d4. There is also a move d5, quite logical, e5, and knight d7. And black is already in trouble. He recommends d5. Let me check it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, d5, e5. And which move does he recommend? I'm curious. And knight g8, I think so. Yeah, because knight g8 is the best move here. Knight e7, no, it cannot be. This cannot be. Knight e7 is a mistake. Knight e7, black is in danger after e6. This I analyzed quite deep. I believe knight e7 is quite okay. I mean, but okay, it was 2015 book. So does he cover e6 move? Yeah. I mean, you can switch on the engine. It's gonna find e6. I found this move obviously with the stockfish, but there was this idea already in a very old game. Okay, I mean, I analyzed this line in 2018, and he did it analysis a couple of years before. Yeah, okay, thank you for the heads up. I did not know this book, so maybe he made some mistake. Maybe, but there was a quite old game between Maxime Vachier-Lagrave against Wang Yu. I think so. They played it in some Young Masters tournament in, I don't remember which year, 2006, something like that. Because when I was writing the database, I was looking at this. And he played, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave was playing with white. He played exactly the same continuation. And Wang Yu played knight g8. Yeah, I think so. Because there was this belief that knight g8 is the best move. Because perhaps of this threat of e6. And you know what? Maxime played e6 anyway. You can check the game. It's in the database. Yeah, so here e6, bishop e6, and rook e6. It's crazy. Quite unbelievable. Yeah, and after rook e6, f takes. Now I don't remember the continuation. So something like knight c3, g3 is the idea to play bishop h3 and so on and so forth. And black needs to tread very carefully. Yeah, knight g8, it's unbelievable, right? If he takes with the bishop, then you sacrifice the rook, which I exactly show you right now. So why knight g8 is so much better is that after knight d7, e6, exclamation mark, bishop e6. And I don't sacrifice immediately. Now I remember this. There was a very quiet move, knight c3. Yeah, knight c3, and black is supposed to do something right now. I mean, bishop cannot leave f6. Yeah, now remember. And Wang Yu, or did he play knight d7? And he played here, I believe, knight f6. Yeah, something like this. Yeah. And now there's this sacrifice. Rook e6, f takes, and g3, bishop h3, knight g5. And in the game, Wang Yu collapsed. Very quickly. He collapsed. He gave up the exchange. And Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, he won a really great game. And they played it when they were, 15, 16 years old? Yeah, so it was quite many years ago, but the idea was known. And for some reason, nobody really plays here knight e4. But I mean, this line is not really that popular. But after knight e4, h3, black still needs to reckon with this idea to play e6, so he cannot play bishop h5. He cannot take on f3 because there's going to be g takes. And I think the main line was something like here, knight h4, bishop d7, knight d2, takes, e6, and knight f3. We are playing out this position as some sort of a French defense with classical ideas. So the ideas are position the bishop here, h4, and something knight g5. And typically when black is making a short castle, he has to watch out for some hostilities going on at the king side. So that's at least the idea. Right. Yeah, I mean, I analyzed this more in depth in my database, so I'm not going to repeat all of the lines, but this at least was the motive that if black plays bishop g4, I'm recommending to play d4, c takes after e5. There is this very beautiful move of bishop e3, knight c3, and black is not equalizing. You can check with the computer if you want. And d5 was e5, right? But again, you have this possibility to play h3. You have this position as never castles in your attack. I mean, it's a classic position, of course. Yeah, I mean, I did not say it's so much better for white. It's just easy to play. It's some sort of a French defense line, and it would demand that you have some knowledge of the French, how to play it out. Yeah, so this probably is a separate topic, how to play it out properly. I'm going to cover it shortly in a different line. Yeah, so I'll show you some of the lines, some of the ideas, which this, again, it comes down to this point, which I believe is very important to gather as many ideas from as many lines as possible. You never know when these lines, they're going to repeat. The knight f5, I think it favors white, yeah, because the knight on f5 is stopping the attack, but again, we would have to check the particular position. I cannot really say it's some sort of a rule for every single position, but again, the bishop on d3, yeah, you're welcome. The bishop on d3 is sort of quite annoying for black. Okay, so again, like I said before, this knight c6 and d6 or d6 and knight c6 is not really that popular. So that's at least the modern theory right now. And let's go to the bishop d7. So bishop d7 is supposedly the peaceful move. I mean, black is trying to play it peacefully. He doesn't mind exchanging the bishops. So I suggest we can try to take it. Queen d7. There is knight d7, which I don't think I should really touch it because it's quite a weird move. There is some reasoning behind this. I believe at the highest level in some blitz games it was played between Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. Nakamura was playing the black, he was playing knight d7 in at least a couple of games. Yeah, although I think those games were played online. Yeah, but they're in the database. I remember this. So queen d7 is the classical move, and in the database I wrote c4 because c4 I believe is the best approach, but it's quite complex. And if you are afraid that you're going to mix it up, because white is typically playing d4, he's trying to squeeze black, and you really need to play it out very, very carefully. Otherwise, black can either equalize or even at some point take it over. I do believe white has the better prospects in this line, but I mean, you have to know this perfectly and understand the ideas. To play something like this in blitz, I mean, you have to think about it. Think about this twice. But there are other interesting combinations instead of the c4. So what's wrong with the simple castling? So we simply making castle. And again, black would play something like knight c6 or knight f6. Pretty much I don't think it really matters which order of the moves is it. Let's assume black is playing, Okay, knight f6, it gives you the possibility to push e5. For example, take, 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 queen c7, rook e1, and typically the bishop goes here. And again, you have a very strong, powerful bishop, something like knight a3, knight c4, d3, queen f3. I've played a number of games like this. Yeah, I have a very good score, but computer says it's nothing. It's really nothing. So I tried to use this as a surprise weapon, this approach. But again, I mean, black would play not immediately knight f6 to be precise. He could play knight c6 to stop this idea. Now we are playing c3. We want to take the center. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so we want to take the center. So that was the idea. I mean, we gave up the bishop. We went for a short castle, and now we want to play c3, d4, take the center. It's very, very human, very positional. And after c3, knight f6. Now here's an interesting choice. You have two moves, either queen e2 or rook e1. You can choose one of them. Maybe you can try both of them, but they have different ideas. For example, let's try queen e2. So we still want to play d4, and black does something like e6, which is the classical way. d4 takes, takes, and this is the absolutely best defense for black. So I'm showing you the best defense. Everything else black is doing, he's worse. So this is the best approach for black. So d5, e5, here, bishop e3, bishop e7, and now it comes the classical idea to put the knight on e1 and try to drive the knight away, or at least try to capture it. Because let's say black is not careful, he plays castle, he is losing. f3, knight g5, h4, thank you for the knight. So black needs to be careful. But, you know, to be honest, it's very difficult to miss this because, I mean, white did play knight e1 the previous move, so there must be a reason why he did this, right? So knight e1, black has to play f6. That's the best move. Here, knight d3, knight d2, and f4. Yeah, and the position, to be honest, is about equal. I played this for many times before I brought my database, and I played this because this was pretty much the only thing I knew to play against the anti-Najdorf approach, and I was playing it all the time in local Latvian tournaments, also in international tournaments, against grandmasters, against amateurs. It didn't matter. I was playing against many players with supposedly good results, but I came to the conclusion it's nothing really, because I was getting it so many times that my opponents eventually figured it out what is the best defense. So for example, he could simply play something like a 5, exchange everything down the C line, and yeah, it's difficult to progress here. So then I was thinking about the second possibility, which to be honest, I never really tried that much, although I knew this idea. So the second idea here is to play rook e1. So rook e1, it might seem is the same idea, but it's not the same idea. So black is again playing the best defense, he's playing e6. He could of course play g6, but he is automatically worse. This is worse for black. Something like bishop g7, you have the center, very powerful space advantage, easy game, bishop g5 is incoming, so nothing to be concerned about. Yeah, so after rook, oh, sorry, what happened here? Yeah, so after rook e1, e6, d4, takes, takes, d5, e5, knight e4. And now you might think, I mean, why did we position the rook on e1? Because now we cannot play bishop e3, knight e1 and try to chase away this knight. But there's a different idea. It's simply knight e2. Black cannot play bishop b4, as tempting as it may seem. You just take on e4. And there is no bishop e1 because of the check. It's rather obvious, but still it's nice to know. So black has to take. Typically everybody plays bishop e7, and now Did I say something about this position about 10 minutes ago? We already have the same position, the same the same French position. If you would switch on the computer will say it's equal. But if you're playing with black, it's not so easy. You would see how many great players in this line went down with black. For example, Boris Gelfand. He was playing against Gawain Jones, I believe, some years ago. I believe Gawain caught him by surprise. Although it was a rapid game, and Boris played all of the logical moves, and he got into trouble very quickly. So I believe it is worth to know all of these ideas and try at least a couple of times. So here the idea is to play. Let me check it. Did I have written it down? Rook c1, castle. Now I don't remember. Pretty sure it was a3 in the beginning. Yeah, a3. Rook goes here, and now comes this idea: rook c3. If black is willing to exchange the rooks, we want to put the rook here and start to play knight g5 and go into offensive. Yeah, I'll try to play this line next time, definitely, because I'm forgetting. I'm playing everything else. Try to play some interesting lines. So, for example, let's say black would do something like, I don't know, for example, b5. Yeah, makes sense, right? b5, a5. I'm trying to do some damage there. Let's position the rook here. a5, knight g5. Now the question is, what to do here for black? Again, it's very easy, very straightforward approach for white. Let's say we are concerned about this threat, and black plays h6. Okay, there's some knight f7 already immediately. I don't know what is this, to be honest. Takes, king g8, bishop h6, no clue. Yeah, it looks rather interesting. But the idea was to play knight h3, queen g4, knight f4, and knight h5. With the help of the rook, this looks like a very solid plan for white. Yeah, so knight g5, h6, knight h3. A black player might start to feel uncomfortable with the king because you have so many pieces which possibly could join the attack. It's the queen, bishop, rook, knight, queen g4 very quickly is incoming, rook g3 is very quickly incoming, and now try to defend this. So after knight g5, black would take, but now the question is, how do you defend against the queen h5, rook h3 threat? It's difficult, especially when you're playing some kind of accelerated time control. Yeah, it looks nice. Computer says this is nothing. I mean, but okay, for computer this is easy. But I mean, try to play this in an actual game. You'll find that it's very easy to misplay this with black. So something like, I don't know. Yeah, okay, I'll try to play something like h6, and then you already risk running into some bishop h6. Yeah, or maybe put the bishop here. Queen goes somewhere here, rook goes somewhere here. Okay, maybe there's some knight e7, knight f5, but some cold-blooded defense. But I think this is a rather interesting approach. Yeah, again, how did it happen? So after bishop b5, bishop d7, takes, queen takes, castle, even after knight f6. Yeah, let's say black plays knight f6 right now, the fifth move. So we still play rook e1 with still the same idea to play c3 and d4. So yeah, I don't know, maybe I don't think it really matters. Maybe black would try to postpone this idea to play knight c6, but there's already quite some nuances there. So let's assume something like knight c6 here, d4 takes, but I think he has to take. Otherwise, you might push at some moment immediately d4, d5, and the rook is standing really great against the king. So he has to take. And there is this positional threat of d4, d5 at some point. Or maybe you just want to play positional with knight c3, but d4, d5 is something that black should be careful about. So again, we reach the same position. Knight d2 is all forced. This is forced. Maybe, yeah, there's bishop b4 instead of the bishop e7, but it makes quite no sense. Yeah, now I don't remember. Was it rook c3 or a3? Yeah, maybe it was a3 in the beginning. Or maybe it was... No, I don't remember, to be honest. I mean, I would have to check again the database. Maybe I could play like this immediately, put the rook on d3, and again, prepare this knight g5. Quite easy idea to try, at least in a couple of games. Okay, so what else is here? Yeah, in the database, I already mentioned, yeah, I'm recommending to play c4, the Marozzi bind. By the way, I think it would be rather interesting. You could also try in a couple of games to simply play b3. Just, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, votes are available. Yeah, they are available 14 days. They are available in my Twitch channel. So if you miss something, or you did not see the beginning, or you don't have the time to see everything until then, you can check it afterwards. It's going to be there. Hi, Anaki. Yeah, hi. And I'm going to also upload them to my YouTube channel. You can use the command !YouTube and try to find out my YouTube channel. And I upload all of them there, and they're going to stay there indefinitely. As long as YouTube is up, they're going to be there. Yeah, so, no, I mean, black supposedly is fine, but this might be a real problem if black is not really familiar with this position. Let's say if black would have played this position. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. If black would have played this position a number of times, yeah, then it might be a problem. I mean, not a problem, but black might really solve all of the problems. But if black is having this position for the first time, or he is not familiar with the anti-Najdorfs, he knows only the main lines, then this might be a problem for him. Yeah, thank you again, Dust Monkey. Appreciate it. So yeah, b3 might be interesting, something like bishop b2, d3, knight d2. But like I said, I do believe the best setup for black is always try to close this bishop. So something like knight c6, bishop b2, and e5. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not playable, but there's a plenty of room for improvising. Okay, so let's go back. Very quickly, I'll give you some insight about Nakamura's played knight takes on d7. It's a rather odd move. The idea is super deep at their level, at top GM level. Black is reserving, I mean, black is supposedly trying to win a tempo by not playing knight c6 and queen d7, playing knight d7 immediately. He has the immediate access to rook c8. And there I propose this idea to play short castle, knight f6, queen e2. And I formulated for myself this idea that tried not to exchange the last dark square bishop. So try to position it on the opposite diagonal. So if the bishop on f8, it goes to g7, you put it on g5. So if the bishop goes on e7, you put it on b2. So that's at least, I was trying to formulate at least some playable ideas in this line. So for example, something like, let's say g6. G6 here, 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 here. And the typical idea is to play bishop g5, knight d2, f4, f5. If you would check a YouTube, I played a very nice game in this line. It was a blitz game, but it was very, very nice. I was playing against Darmen Sadvakasov. Yeah, I think so. He was former world junior champion, about 2600. And he quit playing chess when he was at junior level. Now he has some work at the government level. I don't know, really. I mean, he is not really actively playing chess. And he was a visitor of a local blitz tournament here in Latvia a couple of years ago. So I managed to beat him very nicely. You can try to find this game on YouTube. I type my last name and his name and try to find the game. Yeah, I would love to find the game, but it was rather educational about exactly this setup, how to play it out. And yeah, so and let's say if the bishop goes to e7, let's say e6, then you position the bishop on the other diagonal. You play b3, bishop b2, and there is still this idea to play c3 d4. I'm sorry, wrong arrow. Or you can play d3, knight d2, and play some positional chess, but most likely you're gonna have to play f4, f5 at some point anyway. Yeah, so it's really quite interesting stuff. And finally we came to the knight d7 move. Knight d7 move is the most aggressive continuation and quite interesting. There are a number of ways how you can play it out for white. For example, in the database, again, which I'm recommending, there's quite deep stuff. I'm recommending this line: short castle, a6. Now there's a super deep move, bishop d3, with the idea to play rook e1, c3, bishop c2, and d4. Quite easy. But if you would remember one of the side lines we checked earlier in this bootcamp, you would remember, wait a second, after yeah, oh, okay, here you can still play d4. Now with the short castle, I think it's still possible, but not the best order of the most. We can still try to make it done. Okay, let's check it. Short castle, a6, takes, d4, takes, queen d4, and still the same idea to play knight c3. Let's assume black is playing e5, queen d3, h6, knight c3, and now you can play the same idea: knight d2, rook d1, knight f1, knight e3, and knight e5. Very easy stuff. Yeah, but this is easy to play. I mean, you already played the first 15 moves, and you know perfectly the plan. And for black, it's very difficult to deviate from this, or he has to be a quite experienced player to recognize all of this. But you know, to be honest, I do believe more accurate order of the moves here is after knight d7, you can push immediately d4. Yeah. So d4, black would try to provoke you to some kind of hostilities with knight f6. Yeah, after knight f6, I believe you can still play knight c3. Takes, h6, takes. Yeah, now since he has played knight f6, now you have the option to play bishop g5 and make a long castle. And again, you are ahead in development. I believe I covered this line earlier in this training session. But okay, let's assume after d4, black does play the main line, takes, a6, and he should be happy by conquering the bishop. After bishop d7, and we are again switching to the same line, knight c3. Knight c3, waiting for black to play e5, h6. We are going to position the knight d4, knight c4, knight e3, knight d5. So for black, if black is familiar with this idea, he would play it out very carefully. So it would be something like e6. Yeah, e6, castle, and I don't remember, to be honest, something like this to avoid any bishop g5 ideas. Yeah, but again, now the question is, can't you play bishop f4? I think you can actually. e5 is knight e5. That's a problem for black. No, wait, what did I misplay here? I should have included knight e5. It doesn't matter. Okay, I did not analyze this line, the specific line of queen c7, so I was just having a look at this. I believe bishop c6 was super accurate stuff, how a really prepared player from black would play this out. Because at some time I was playing myself Najdorf for black, and when I discovered this line for white, obviously I had a question: what I'm going to do against this with black? And I realized this e5 here, this e5 queen d3 h6 gives white a super easy game. You could check the highest level games. I believe Vishwanathan Anand was playing it at least once. I believe more than once, to be honest. Jan Nepomniachtchi once got completely destroyed in this line with black. He failed to find accurate continuation. And why just who did he play? Maybe it was Sergei Karyakin against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Now I don't remember, to be honest. Which year, which game was it? Now I just remember even Nepomniachtchi, one of the leading world's players, he misplayed this line. And this only proves that this is rather tricky line if you even a very good players play at least once. Okay, so let's go back to the main stuff. So this is still something interesting. You can try to play it out. d4, c takes queen d4, but I'm recommending for a long-term play, I'm recommending still to play short castle. If black is rushing with knight f6 and not a6, you have the possibility, extra possibility, to retreat with the bishop on f1. So for example, something like a6. Now we won't take on d7. We are going to retreat here with the idea to play c3 and d4. So black would try to set up some kind of a hedgehog. Let's say b6. And yeah, actually, I think you immediately can switch to hedgehog. Now, yes, c3 now is going to be too slow because this pawn is going to be under attack. But now you can switch to hedgehog. Here, here, f3, c4, knight c3, bishop e3, and so on and so forth. Again, you can reach quite interesting positions with white, and not necessarily your opponent will know how to play it out. I mean, obviously, you also would have to know something here for white. I mean, it's not like you can easily play quite a popular line without any knowledge. But you don't have to if you don't want to. You can still retreat after knight f6, a6, bishop d3. Still the same idea. And again, the point is c3, bishop c2, d4. This is what I recommend in the database. And after some time, I wrote the database in 2018. And after some time, I mean, obviously, everybody at even the highest level, they were playing this. I mean, from white, from black. This was quite a contested line. I mean, you could check all of the super GMs who played Sicilian Najdorf. They had quite a good share of anti-Sicilians of bishop b5, including Magnus Carlsen. And here after, knight d7 castle, ace. Oh, okay, now I wanted to show you. There was a rather tricky order of the moves. Knight d7, which I actually thought I would love to include in an update of my database, is consider playing c3 immediately. It's sort of an older line. In the beginning, yeah, Abdullah, in the beginning I said it's like coming straight with a fire extinguisher. So your opponent is playing the sharp line, this dragon, this Najdorf, he is going aggressively. You are with the fire extinguisher, putting out the flames, right? And that's essentially is this bishop b5 anti-Sicilian approach. You're removing your opponent the possibilities to play a sharp game. Yeah. Of course, if you are happy with this, if you really prefer a positional game yourself, again, like I said before, if you prefer a really sharp game, yeah, maybe this is not going to be really so entertaining for you, but I believe positional players, there are more than sharp players overall. Yeah, so here's this idea to play c3 immediately. And what was the move here? Yeah, I think it was knight f6. And now comes the paradoxical move, bishop d3. Again, we are not waiting for a6, b5 to happen. We are retreating immediately bishop c2. This is something which I would love to test myself still. I've sort of memorized this. I would love to try this at least a couple of times. I definitely will include this in my database update. So, and try to analyze this. For example, black would play something like, let's say, g6 or e6. Those are quite reasonable continuations. Let's say g6, bishop c2, bishop g7, and again, now you place d4. That's it. Takes, takes, castle, castle, and whatever black does. You just play knight c3, bishop g5, or something. Again, you have advantage. And black seemingly made no mistakes. He made only human moves. So, yeah, it would really take some knowledge for black to properly play this out. So after bishop d3, what was the main move here? It would have some resemblance with Ray Lopez. He could try still to play e5, but it changes nothing in our approach. So bishop c2, bishop e7, short castle, and e5. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so after knight f3, d6, bishop b5, knight d7, short castle a6, bishop d3, knight f6, that was the line which I was advocating, and rook e1. Yeah, rook e1, and now comes really, really deep stuff from this point on. So black has so many continuations. So this is obviously the main line of the anti-Sicilian, anti-Najdorf approach. So after rook e1, black would play immediately b5. Black would play immediately e6, and black would play g6. You might remember there was quite a famous game in 2015, 16, I don't remember which year. Magnus Carlsen was playing against Veselin Topalov, and Carlsen was playing this line with white. I believe in the particular game, Veselin with black. Yeah, for anti-Najdorf approach. Yeah, it's main line. Yeah, people have analyzed this, even this. Yeah, so I think he's surprised with b5, c4, and g5, which was a shocker back then. So Magnus definitely was surprised. No, I think he was pretty much fair and square outplayed. Yeah, or did he lose on time? No, I think he was outplayed. Yeah, I don't remember a particular game, but he definitely misplayed it. And g5 came as a surprise, and he did not know how to properly play it out, and Topalov won a very nice game for black. So here the best continuation is, let me try to remember, knight g5, accept the sacrifice. Here, b takes, and I don't remember what Magnus played it. I think it was knight a3. Yeah, I think he played knight a3. I don't remember. Maybe somebody could check the database. So knight c3, rook g8, d4, takes, and bishop d3. Yeah, so this is the main line which I analyzed. And black is strategically, I would say, busted. I mean, it's very, very dangerous position for black to play, because white easily positions the bishop on g3, pretty much inevitably. So the g file for black doesn't really give anything for him. By the way, I've played this line. The strongest player I've played myself, although it was an online game, was against Maxim Vashelograph. And he played against me here, bishop h6. Yeah, it was Pro Chess League, whichever year it was. Yeah, knight a3, I think so. Yeah, knight a3 was not the best move as far as I remember. Yeah, and MVL played against me bishop h6, and I sort of believe against him. And I played something else. So I think I played a 4. I lost the game, although I was winning. Yeah, but the best move here is knight h7. Yeah, so since then, I won a couple of games in this line, including playing online games. And black is just down a pawn for no compensation whatsoever. There's no tactics, nothing works for him. Bishop g4 is always bishop e2. Yeah, and always the bishop goes to g3, and black has no attack whatsoever. But as far as I believe, this line is no longer being played at a high level. it's considered to be dangerous. Yeah, so this line, again, how did we get here? So after d6, bishop b5, knight d7. Again, c3 is interesting. c3, bishop d3 is interesting. Immediately, d4 is interesting, which I showed you. But okay, I'm gonna try to stick to my main line. a6, bishop goes here with the idea of c3, bishop c2. Wrong. Bishop c2 and d4. So black plays knight f6, rook e1, very accurate move. And now black would play, so b5 is dangerous. c4, there's obviously more than that. So g5, black doesn't have to play g5. But if he doesn't do this, he is automatically slightly worse. He could play g6. And there was a very nice game between, let me try to remember, I think it was Dmitry Yakovenko against, again, Yam Nepomniachtchi. No surprise, I mean, Yam Nepomniachtchi plays the Najdorf all the time. And everybody against him comes with a fire extinguisher. Tries to steer the game towards a positional game. So here was the, again, approach c3, bishop c2, d4, e5, and a4. Very accurate, yeah. And white still keeps sort of a better position. Again, computer says it's sort of equal if black takes immediately twice on d4. But again, he is left with this pawn, and I believe in the particular game, Nepomniachtchi lost, as far as I remember. I mean, maybe somebody could check this, but he did not solve all the problems here. Again, I mean, if he would meet the same line again, yeah, I'm pretty sure he would solve all of the problems, most likely. But in the particular game, he was unable to solve it. And what else is there? Yeah, so there's the main line, the main of the main of the main lines. Yeah, the last line, the last main line is e6, c3, and now only black plays b5. c4 now would be a waste of time. Bishop c2. We want to play d4. So this comes as a main move. a4, here, here, here. All forced, and all forced. Yeah. So I have to give here a lot of credit for Egyptian grandmaster Amin Bassem, because he expanded my analysis even further. When I published the database, I believe after b takes on a4, I was recommending e4, e5, and trying to prove very hard that white is supposedly better, or at least an interesting game. And he found a super interesting move, bishop e3, which I included in my database analysis. I've been playing in online games all the time. Yeah, I mean, he can take on e4, right? But, I mean, find the next moves for black. I mean, something like, what was it? Knight e4, knight d2, knight e2, and knight e2. Super difficult. Super difficult to play it out for black if you don't know this. You mean before a4? Yeah, so okay, this position is quite dangerous for black, so he has to be very careful. White is giving, computer is giving a wattage for white without two pawns. Can you imagine this? Some typical ideas involve rook a4 sacrifice. You cannot really take the rook, and if you don't, the rook goes here. It's quite unbelievable. Yeah. So it really was a great discovery by Amin Bassem. You mean immediately on e4? Yeah, but then you take the pawn on b5, so black is behind in development. But there's a very nice trick. For example, after queen e2, black could take knight takes a4 immediately. And there's this very nice motive not to take on a4 with the bishop, because black is perfectly fine. You immediately push e5, and if you take, now there's a rook a4, rook takes on a4. Take, bishop takes, and black's position is completely falling apart, because knight e7 is, by obvious reasons, impossible because of knight e5 and rook d1, and king e7 is just terrible. Yeah, so knight e5, bishop g5. There's so many incoming threats, and black is just collapsing. Yeah, I believe a very good GM, Andrei Valakitin, fall into this trap a couple of years ago. At the GM level, I believe they already know this idea that you cannot take on a4 with the knight. But I mean, anyway, this is quite a deep stuff. So obviously, you could study this if you want. But I mean, you don't have to study all of this line, because essentially then it might happen that we have chosen to play an anti-Sicilian approach, which has quite a long modern theory anyway, right? Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways how you can still get a quite a reasonable game. For example, I believe after 97, Magnus himself, he played here quite an interesting new move. He played a4, which was also rather interesting. Yeah, so the idea was, after a4, if black plays a6, I take on d7 and I simply push a5. And then I don't go for d4 and simply play positional chess, something like d3. I don't remember, something like knight c3, knight d2, knight c4, knight b6. I think he played this line against Alexei Dreyev in the World Cup. I don't remember which World Cup was it. And Magnus played this as white, a4. I did some very vague analysis in my database, but yeah, not really so much. So it's rather interesting. So I mean, anyway, the bottom line is that there's so many interesting lines that you can play, and you don't have to find um, all of the alternatives after you push d4. So like I said in the beginning of my training camp, typically here white always goes for d4, right? Takes, if you didn't see the first part of my, or the beginning of my bootcamp, and now white plays every single possible move here, trying to justify the reason why we push d4 in the first place. So this is not really my approach. I mean, yeah, so bishop g5 supposedly is already not giving any advantage for white. Bishop p3, supposedly black is doing very much fine in this bishop e6, f3, h5, which has a very solid reputation for black right now as far as I'm concerned. And the theory is constantly changing, and black is holding everywhere with a really good prospect. So again, that was the reason why I realized I need to find some alternatives earlier than this. Right. Okay, I'm pretty sure I didn't miss anything. If you have some questions which I did not cover, you can definitely ask them. I was trying to give you an overview. Again, I hope you got a better picture. Why exactly I chose bishop b5 over, for example, Alapin. Alapin, maybe it's still playable, but my reasoning is that I believe that Alapin most likely is not really such a good opening if you play it directly. But for example, you could play it like knight f3, e6, and c3. Yeah, because at this moment black already has played e6 and he has less options to play it out actively. Yeah, then probably I would advocate this as an interesting line for white. If pushing c3 immediately, I've never been really a fan myself, but again, I mean, if you like this, yeah, then you definitely could try. Ah, yeah, right. Yeah, there was again this weird move, knight a3, which I believe was recently played by Magnus against in Lindora Zabi. He played against somebody, I don't remember who, and I believe he won the game. Um, that's Abdullah. Yeah, I understand your question, but it's not so easy to answer. I mean, you have to choose the opening according to your playing style. That's the best I can say. So if you are a positional player, you like to play it peacefully, you like some strategic chess, you don't want to go forward rushing, going for the main lines, very sharp stuff, yeah, probably anti-Sicilian is totally fine for you. But I mean, for complete player, for to know everything, I believe you have to try everything. For example, I had a fair share myself of open Sicilians. I played quite a number of open Sicilian games, including D4, the main lines, and whatnot. But I just discovered, I mean, it's not for me because I feel more secure myself playing more anti approaches, more structural based positions rather than memorizing long theoretical lines. That's my approach again. So my memory perhaps is not that good, and I try to choose something which I can uh, more freely improvise on the board. Yeah, so that's my approach. Yeah, but anyway, I mean, in order to become a better player, I think you have to try everything. So yeah, you're welcome. So you can definitely go for the open Sicilians. You can go for anti-Sicilian approaches. Just try both of them and see how it feels. If you're Since you are playing as white, you can try e4, d4, knight f3, c4. I did not mention it in the beginning that when I started to play e4 myself, I switched at some moment because I was so unhappy with the position which arose. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I was so unhappy with the position which were rising after my openings. I just changed my opening. I started to play knight f3, the first move. Knight f3, g3, bishop g2, the retis. I was very happy, super happy, because I was getting new, fresh positions, which were really interesting. And perhaps in the future I could do a stream about the reti, about the positions, typical structures, how to play them out according to my experience. At some moment from Reti, I decided, okay, I need to also add some English opening. So I started to play c4, first move. Then I was combining it with Reti, c4, knight f3, knight f3, c4, and so on and so forth. e4 I had skipped to play for a long time. Then I realized, since I'm playing c4, it would be interesting to check d4 as well, right? So I started to play some d4. So I was making like a full circle all the time. c4, d4, knight f3, c4, d4, knight f3. I wasn't even playing e4. Now I'm back at e4. Yeah, because I mean I want to change something all the time. Yeah, for me I cannot really understand players who are not changing anything. They're playing the same opening for years, the same. It's not interesting. I believe we, as a chess players, we want to evolve, right? I mean, we want to try something else all the time because, like I said before, yeah, back to e4, right? I mean, because right now I feel like I'm an e4 player. I'm updating my opening repertoire. I'm checking the new lines. I see something new. For example, uh, right now I don't like the French defense because there's the line which I'm playing. I played already so many times, and that was the reason why I was thinking about skipping e4 and going to d4. And then somebody told me there is this interesting line you should check in the French. I checked it. Okay, okay. This is interesting. Perhaps I should still try to play e4, right? Yeah. So it's really interesting in terms of improving as a chess player. Try to play as many lines as possible. And if you would check the top level chess, these guys they're playing everything. I mean, they cannot really afford to play only one line. You can remember, I mean, the good old times when it's not even good old times. I mean, I believe right now Maxime Vachier-Lagrave still pretty much plays the only lines. It's unbelievable how he can keep up the top level. Play the only Najdorf, I believe he only plays Sicilian Najdorf, which is incredible. And with black, I believe Grunfeld. Yeah, that's his top choices. But I believe he's suffering because of this, and he is already trying to expand his repertoire. But everybody else, Magnus Carlsen, Vishwanathan Anand, Hikaru Nakamura, Jan Nepomniachtchi, I mean, they pretty much play everything. They play e4, d4, c4, knight f3 with black. They play e5, d5, c5. At that level, they have to. Yeah. So they're trying to evolve themselves in every single opening and try to play everything and be unpredictable. Yeah, okay, at that level, unpredictability is super important to surprise the opponent. For us mortals, maybe not so much. Right. Okay. Maybe some couple of final questions, and I'll finish today's stream. Perhaps there's something which I did not cover. So, yeah, so today's plan was to give you some insight about possibilities, how to treat the Sicilian Najdorf, what are the possibilities. various setups. Perhaps you learn something new, some interesting idea which you didn't even know or did not pay attention to before, and you might try to play in your own games. The next stream is when I'm gonna do my bootcamp is gonna be next Friday. I still don't know, to be honest, what is gonna be the topic. Most likely it's gonna be something theoretical. So I'll think about this. I have still a couple of databases which I wrote I did not cover. Perhaps I could talk about the e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5, which is right now super hot continuation. Yeah, I mean, since Magnus Carlsen played this in the World Championship match against, uh, I mean, Fabiano Corano was playing against Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship match. It became super contested line, and he was trying to play the d4 line, which right now the modern theory is d4, c takes, knight e4, the Sveshnikov line, yeah, e5, which is not my style really, to be honest, because yeah, Russelino, it's also my super absolutely favorite because it's a strategical complex battle. There are no sharp lines. It's not like I don't mind playing sharp. I mean, not always. Yeah, that I might do the next time, but I'll still think about this. Yeah, so perhaps I could try to cover this knight c6 and see how it goes from there. Right.